hunting season of 2017, I got in on a lease with a guy from work. I didn't have time to check the area out before the season started, so the inevitable occurred and I got lost my first day. That morning I left the camp just before dawn. I'm not the kind that hunts from a stand. I'm your traditional stalk and shoot type of hunter. Since I wasn't familiar with the lease and I stupidly left my GPS back at the camp, I had to stick to the main paths in order to not get lost. Most of the morning I did well. However, as I grew tired, I lost focus and veered from the trail. In my defense, I came across this really fresh set of tracks. Of course, I had to follow them. The sucky thing was that they continued on to a neighboring property and I had to stop following them. When I looked up, I realized I was way off the trail and didn't know how to get back. The rest of the day was spent trying to find my way back to camp. About an hour before dark, I noticed a rundown house and cabin in the distance. By now, I wasn't sure whose property I was on. I hoped that if somebody was living there, they could help me, but as I got closer, I could tell the place had been abandoned for a good while. I knocked to make sure, but with no reply, I made myself at home. My first goal was to get a fire going. After I did that, I began combing through the cabinets for food and other things I thought could help me. Not much, but a questionable can of chili and some candles were found. I heated up the chili over the fire and combined it with a half-eaten bag of chips. After dinner, I looked through the bedroom and discovered an old map of the area. I wasn't sure how accurate it would be after all that time, but I was happy to find it. I spread it out on the floor in front of the fireplace and planned my course for the morning. I was shocked to see that I had veered over 5 miles from where I'd started. At some point, I must have dozed off. During the night, I had a super vivid dream that a man was sitting in the chair next to me and just staring. He never said a word. And when I jerked awake and saw that I was alone, I was relieved and quickly fell back asleep. The following morning, I woke up at 6:15 and got my stuff together. I made sure the fire was completely put out and headed back to camp. I just stepped from the house when I came face to face with a strange man. The guy from my dream, in fact. I was confused at first, and when he spoke, I knew my dream had really happened. This man was holding an old Marlin 30-30, not an odd sight for a hunter during deer season. This dude didn't look like a hunter, though. He wore an old, dirty backpack and normal, bright, yet dingy street clothes. His eyes had a very crazed look to them that made me uncomfortable to gaze at. I was surprised, but regained my calm and said, "Good morning." Instead of saying it back, he just stared at me with those crazed black eyes. I began to say something, but he interrupted and asked what I was doing in the cabin. Before I could answer, he blurted out that it was his place. I continued and explained what had happened the day before. The entire time I was telling him this, he was gripping the rifle so tightly his knuckles were beginning to turn white. His behavior was beginning to scare me. The only thing I wanted to do was get back to camp and then home. The last word had barely left my lips before he angrily told me that it was his place. It appeared to have been empty for quite a while, but I wasn't going to argue with him. I apologized as quickly as I could and went on my way. For a good 100 yards or more, I kept looking behind me. I was waiting to get shot in the back. Every time I looked back, he was staring maniacally back at me and death gripping his gun. It took a couple of hours to find my way back, but by then, I'd had plenty of time to dwell upon our encounter, and I was truly freaked out by then. It actually hit me. The guys that were still in camp were happy to see me and asked what had happened. I just said I got lost and camped out for the night, never mentioning the nutcase that I met. I doubt that they take it seriously anyhow. The whole experience had me so scared I wanted nothing more than get home. The other guys must have thought I was crazy. After throwing all my stuff into the back of my truck, I tore off out of there and never returned. I knew I'd never be able to feel safe knowing that kook was somewhere out in the woods, possibly watching our party. That following Monday, my friend asked what had caused me to leave so abruptly. I made up some lie about my wife being sick. I'm not sure if he even believed it. Nothing was said about it again, and maybe, just maybe, things are better that way.
I was 10 years old. My family and I moved houses after my dad got a job offer. I had to leave my old neighborhood, leave along my old friends, and my sister and I had to get used to things all over again. One day we were quite bored, so we decided to take a hike and explore through the new woods around our place. Now, behind our house, that's where the forest is most dense, and you could hear a stream running through it. We had been walking about an hour when we heard a snap in the nearby bushes, which freaked out my little sister. She had always been one of those jumpy types of people, but I was stubborn, so we carried on. It was about 5 minutes after we heard the snap in the bushes, when all around us, nature went silent. It felt like we were being watched. Cliché, I know, but it felt like there wasn't just the two of us. There was something out there staring right at us. Then, the forest silence was suddenly broken by a strange yowl, like a screeching cat, but more drawn out and much, much deeper. It was followed by the distressed call from a deer, and then utter silence. The call was about 100 yards away from us, so we bolted. But whatever it was gaining on us. And in my panic, I pushed my sister into a thorn bush, and I followed after, too shocked to feel the pain. We held each other tightly, and then we heard a deep growl to the right of us. Slowly, we turned to look, bracing ourselves to come face to face with this beast. But when we looked, there was nothing there. But then the stench hit us. A stench like sulfur, bodily waste, and copper. Then we heard a scratching sound above us, and we snapped our heads up to look at it. What we saw would scar us for the rest of our lives. What we saw was a creature with a body shape similar to that of a panther, but light gray with a black stripe down its spine. The head was more akin to a boar, but its feet, they were like a dog's paws, but it did not have a tail. Its eyes were a misty blue, like it was blind or something. But then it snapped its head to look at us, and I swear, it smiled. It was nothing a human being should ever have to see. It had teeth like razors, and there seemed to be red fluid dripping from its yellowish fangs. We ran, and we did not look back, not even as the branches began snapping, and the growls and grunts of this creature echoed. When we got to the edge of our property, the paw steps faded away. We ran to our front door, opened it, and slammed it shut, before passing out from exhaustion and terror on the couch. My sister and I still talk about this incident, and each time we bring it up, the same spark of fear blazes in her eyes.